The Major League Baseball regular season is over. Let's do a quick recap of the Mets regular season and look ahead to the wild card round. I'm going to do it right now. Well, welcome back to New York Sports WickerMedia. I am watching K99. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. So in this video, what we're going to do is look ahead to the wild card round, the New York Mets versus the San Diego Padres. We're going to talk about what my ideal 26-man roster would look like. Take a look at a couple of stats here with the Padres, just talk about a few things. But before I do that, I want to do a quick recap of the Mets regular season. They won 101 games. They finished tied for first place with the Atlanta Braves. Obviously, with the 3-game sweep in Atlanta that they went through, they lost the tiebreaker by one measly game. And it hurts. It still hurts, I've got to say, because there's no team in sports that I despise more than the Atlanta Braves. And it goes back 25, 30 years for me. It is family related. It goes very, very deep for me. So losing to that team, even when they stink, I take it a little bit extra personally. And this one hurt a lot because this should have been the best Mets regular season team of my lifetime. I can't remember 1986. I can remember 88 a little bit. I mean, 2006 I thought was the most dominant regular season team I ever saw the Mets have. It didn't work out quite so well in the playoffs. They didn't have any starting pitching that was really of much note once they finally got to the playoffs. But I thought that 06 team was pretty fantastic. And this team is probably better than 06, but the bottom line is this. They won more games, but they didn't win the division. And because of that, it feels a little bit extra hollow, like they almost underachieved. And it's hard for me to believe that I'm saying that after winning 101 games, but that's how it feels. But there is a way to make it right. You got to win the pennant. Absolute minimum, win the National League pennant. And it's going to be a hard road to hold, going through San Diego, Los Angeles, and likely Atlanta, possibly St. Louis. Long shot is Philadelphia. But it is possible. So I want to give out first a couple of team awards. My MVP for the Mets for the 2022 season is the closer, Edwindiaz. And I'm so glad I didn't give up on him. I know a lot of people did, and I understand why they did. I just felt with his talent, with his personality, that he was going to succeed. What happened in 2019? You could chalk it up to the change in scenery. You could chalk it up to a different baseball where he had a lot of trouble gripping his slider. You could talk about all kinds of different things, but he got a little better in 2020, a little better in 2021, but this year he put together, I think, the most dominant season a Mets reliever has ever had. Couple quick numbers. 62 innings pitched. 32 saves compared to only 3 blown saves. 32 out of 35. That's awesome. He allowed 34 hits, walked 18, struck out 118 batters. That's an average of 17 batters struck out per 9 innings. So just under 2 batters per inning, which is unbelievable. He struck out 2 out of 3 batters that he faced. His whip, walks plus hits divided by innings pitched, is a measly 0.839. If you've got a whip under 1, believe me, you're doing it well. And here's one other number. In 2019, let's do a comparison. 2019, Diaz allowed 15 home runs in 66 innings pitched. So basically 1 home run every 4 innings. This year, 3 home runs in 62 innings. That's one home run allowed in nearly every 21 innings. Way to go, Edwindiaz. Please sign a contract extension. My surprise player is going to be Starling Marte. And I've said this on previous videos. I did not know just how good he was until he became a Met. And now that you see his absence with this broken finger, it's become all the more apparent. His average, 292, 16 home runs, 63 RBIs, 18 stolen bases. His on-base plus slugging is 815. Excellent numbers. And without Marte in the lineup, there is a certain dynamic element that this team is just lacking. And when they only scored, I believe, 7 runs in the 3-game series in Atlanta, you could feel the void. You could really feel the void. My disappointment for the season is the entire trade deadline. Tyler Naquin, Daniel Vogelbach, Darren Ruff, need I say more? Michael Givens, for the most part. These guys all underachieved. The only reason I'm not overly upset is because there really wasn't that one slugger traded outside of Juan Soto, and believe me, Juan Soto was never going to be traded within the National League East. But there wasn't that one other slugger who got traded that the Mets could have realistically had. There were talks about Wilson Contreras. He didn't go anywhere. But still, the Mets just did not refuel this team the way they needed to. And when I made videos earlier about my confidence in the Mets winning the division, it was under the precipice that they were going to get another legitimate bat to give Pete Alonso protection. And it has just been a revolving door of players in that 5 spot. So the entire trade deadline is an epic F. Now maybe one of these guys can still redeem themselves in the playoffs. If one of them has a signature moment in the playoffs, you know what? We'll forget about the regular season. But as of now, no good. And my comeback player is going to be Jeff McNeil, the winner of the National League Batting Championship. You know, he had a 75-point increase in his batting average from last season. He was trying to hit too many home runs last year. He went back to basics that made us fall in love with the squirrel, and it absolutely worked. And he beats out Freddie Freeman for the National League Batting Championship. So that is my year-end awards for the Mets. Now let's look ahead here. So the San Diego Padres will be coming to Citi Field for Friday, Saturday, and possibly Sunday. This 2 out of 3 series. The Mets and Padres played 6 times this season, San Diego winning 4 of the 6. Probably my biggest concern is the Mets facing Yu Darvish in Game 1. The Mets have never hit Darvish in their entire history. This season alone, Darvish has pitched 14 innings against the Mets, 1 run allowed over 6 hits. Not very encouraging. And then in Game 2, the Padres will throw Blake Snell, formerly of the Rays, pretty good postseason pitcher, and a lefty. And the Mets are hitting .246 against lefties this season compared to .265 against right-handed pitchers. And then in the bullpen, you got to deal with the big man Josh Hader, traded over to the Padres at the trade deadline from the Milwaukee Brewers. Hader got off to a very rough start with San Diego, but in the last couple of weeks seems to have found his way again. In his last 11.1 innings pitched, he's allowed just 1 earned run. Now, I will say this. Josh Hader has blown a number of playoff games in his career. All you need to do is look back at the 2019 wild card game when he pitched against Washington, blew it, and it helped propel Washington to the only World Series that they may ever win. So looking at the lineup, a couple of players. Now, Manny Machado and Juan Soto will get all the attention. Both absolutely fantastic talents. But there's always a couple of grindy, annoying players that you always have to face. And with this team, Jake Cronenworth is definitely one of them. Eric Hosmer. We as Mets fans have nightmares about him from the 2015 World Series, their first baseman. And then you have Brandon Drury. Right-handed hitter, came over from Cincinnati, did a nice job evening out that lineup. And then Jurickson Profar, who will be hitting at the top of the order most likely. One of the biggest jobs the Mets pitching staff has is to keep Profar off base. It's going to be key. Now, as far as the Mets rotation goes, so to me, when you have a 3-game series at the most, you only need 3 starting pitchers. Now, Max Scherzer has already been confirmed to be the starter for Game 1 on Friday night. Buck Showalter has made that announcement. Now, to me, it all comes down to what happens in Game 1. Because if the Mets win Game 1, then you could potentially take the risk of holding Jacob degrom out of the series so that he would be ready to pitch Game 1 in Los Angeles, and you could potentially use degrom twice in that series, potentially, in a best-of-5 series. Now, if the Mets lose that first game, then you pitch Jacob Game 2. But if they win, then you would come with Chris Bassett, in my opinion. So those are going to be the 3 starting pitchers for this particular series. And here's the other thing. It comes down to short rest. Max Scherzer has pitched on 3 days rest quite a few times in his career. Jacob degrom never has, and now is not the time to start. So if Max Scherzer pitches Game 1 against San Diego, which he will, and let's say the Mets sweep, well, Scherzer would be in line to pitch Game 2 against the Dodgers on normal rest. And then, if needed, if you want to, you could come back with Scherzer on 3 days rest and have him pitch a decisive Game 5 if the series gets that far. So for right now, you start with Max, and if they win, I would go with Chris Bassett. If they lose that game, I would come back with Jacob degrom and then take my chances with Chris Bassett in Game 3. So that's how I'm setting up this rotation. Okay, so now we're going to do one other thing. We're going to have a little fun here. We're going to talk about the 26-man roster and what the Mets should do to get this whole thing set up. So right now you have we have 29 guys technically on the roster. We're going to bring a little graphic up here. And we've got everybody arranged by position. We've got starting pitchers, we've got relief pitchers, catcher, infield, outfield, and designated hitter. So here's how we're going to do it. The first thing I'm going to do is say absolutely no Darren Ruff on this roster. He has done nothing since he arrived. He's currently injured anyway. He doesn't even count towards the 28-man roster. I just wanted to make it very clear Darren Ruff is the first player who is being left off this roster. Now, I want to make a point here with the outfield. It is still uncertain if Starling Marte will be able to play in the series as he continues to try to come back from a finger injury after getting hit by a pitch. As of right now, I don't expect him to play, but if he does, I want him to take Tyler Naquin's spot. Tyler Naquin is a golden sombrero waiting to happen. I don't have much use for him at all, and I would leave him off. Okay, so no matter what, I want Terrence Gore on this roster. I want him as a backup outfielder if you need to put in some extra defense in there. And you have the pinch running availability as well. That is a big asset, especially in a late game if it goes to extra innings or anything like that. So now we're going to go after the pitching a little bit. Now, let's think about this. In a best out of 3 series, you only need 3 starting pitchers in this series. So I'm not necessarily taking the best 28 players. I am actually going to keep Cookie Carrasco on this roster and put him in the bullpen. Now, here's why. Against San Diego this season, Cookie Carrasco has 12 innings pitched. He's allowed 10 hits and only 2 runs with 11 strikeouts. He has done very well against San Diego. So I would leave Taijuan Walker out, but I'm going to bring him back for the Dodgers series and cut off one of these 2 additional DHs. So that is my plan as of right now. So Walker's going to be left off, and also Trevor Williams is going to have to be left off because yesterday against the Nationals he threw 79 pitches. I don't think he's going to be available for a couple of days. So you leave Williams out. And so there is your 26-man roster for the first round of the playoffs. So your starting pitchers are Max Scherzer, Jacob degrom, and Chris Bassett. In the bullpen, you have Edwin Diaz, Adam Ottavino, Seth Lugo, Trevor May, Drew Smith, Michael Givens, Joely Rodriguez, and David Peterson. That gives you 2 lefties out of the bullpen, and you actually have 2 potential long men if you need them. You have Cookie Carrasco, and you have David Peterson, who can eat a couple of innings up. And you would need that without Trevor Williams. You want that insurance policy. At catcher, you have Thomas Nido and James McCann. I know there are a lot of Mets fans who are looking for a way to get James McCann off the roster, but you can't leave out the defense. I know. In the infield, you have Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil, Francisco Lindor, Eduardo Escobar, Luis Guillorme. Nothing crazy there, no surprises. The outfield is Brandon Nimmo, Mark Hanna, Terrence Gore, who I want in this lineup, or at least I want him on the bench, because if you have any late games that go extra innings and you need to pinch run, that is an absolute weapon for you. And then the 4th spot for me is either going to be for Tyler Naquin or Starling Marte. If Marte's finger will allow him to play, and it's very uncertain at this point if he can even grip a bat at this point, I want Naquin off this roster. I am not a Tyler Naquin fan. He is a golden sombrero waiting to happen. I just can't see anything of value he really brings to the club at this point. And for right now, you can have 3 DHs, Daniel Vogelbach, Francisco Alvarez, and Mark Vientos. Now, of course, this roster will change a little bit. If the Mets do advance to the series against the Dodgers, you'll probably remove one of these DHs, either Alvarez or Vientos, and then you can insert Taijuan Walker. But this is how I would roll for the first round starting this Friday night. Well, that's all we've got for today, and I will be back. We're going to be doing some Jets content. I'll be doing my confidence picks on Thursday night, so that's when that'll go up. My bold predictions, my game preview, that'll be up by Friday. Thanks again for watching. If you're enjoying what you're watching, please like the video. Helps get the word out. Share it with a friend, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much, and I'll see you here with more content from you know where. The Wicker Chair.